Professor Firoz Cachalia concluded his testimony on the stand here at the Aggett Inquest, and he spoke passionately about his time in detention and the efforts that the security police tried to impose on them to stamp down their movement, their student movement, their movement to try and bring democracy into the country. And we speak to Professor Cachalia now. Professor, thank you so much for joining me. You were a student activist at the time, and you were arrested and detained numerous times. You and your cohorts. But you don't want yourselves to be seen as victims, because at the end of the day, you were fighting for something broader.
Yes, we were serious about the struggle. We were very clear about what our goals were. So we wanted one person, one vote. We're not prepared to compromise on that matter. We wanted our leaders on the island and in exile to return home. We did not want them to impose their puppet leaders on us. We wanted to achieve the objective set out in the Freedom Charter. Now, that meant that the entire apartheid system had to be dismantled and overturned, and that the incumbent regime had to lose power. So that's serious. Now, we were not, the struggle was more than, it goes back over 100 years. So there were many people who made sacrifices in every generation. And after the organizations of the people, the ANC and the PAC were banned, the repression was intensified. A lot of people died in detention. A lot of people were arrested and eventually ended up on Robben Island and so forth, or in prisons across the country. But in the 70s, after they banned the Black consciousness organizations and there was a re-emergence of political movements, those were their methods. Treason trials, bannings. I was, I think, 22 years old when I was banned for 5 years. Bannings. People who were detained under the Internal Security Act were routinely tortured. We were not the only ones. Not the only ones. How many deaths were there in detention? So my point simply is this. We were involved in a political struggle. When Mr. de Klerk got up in Parliament and he announced that our leader, Nelson Mandela, was going to be released and ANC and so forth was going to be unbanned, that was the culmination of a political struggle. And in that struggle there were many people who suffered, but we embraced that suffering. We understood there were going to be costs. We went into detention, got tortured, came out and continued.
Professor Cachalia, and this really does go to the point that you were trying to make while you were on the witness stand, that it took Neil's death for things to change and transform, and for action to be intensified for the better, for the movement, for your movement.
Well, let me make 2 points about that. As far as Neil's specific death is concerned, what I was trying to communicate is that they detained a lot of people. They were working towards a treason trial. They were determined to get that outcome. So they were using extreme methods of torture in order to obtain the evidence that they required to achieve that objective. And I think they became more and more desperate because we were not cooperating with them. They were not getting to the point where they could achieve that objective, so they used more and more extreme methods. We all knew or felt that someone was going to die before, and that when Neil died, I don't think that it was not a surprise, and I think we all felt, well, okay, it was him, could have been me. Then, of course, Neil was acknowledged as a leader. When this is how it worked, they took action, and we turned every action that they took into a basis for further development of the struggle. So people mobilized around Neil Aggett as recognized as a hero of the working class, of the trade union movement, and so their attempts to preserve the system always created opportunities for further development of the political struggle. So I just want that to be understood, that we should acknowledge the pain and the suffering and of people who paid the ultimate price. But we should also recognize that the struggle was a serious matter, that in every generation, including our generation, we took that responsibility on our shoulders.